Here's what you missed on WSBA's Morning News with Gary Sutton.
Congressman, always good to have you on the show. How are you?
Great to be here, Gary. I'm well. How are you?
I am doing okay. How can you not be doing okay on a nice day like today?
Yeah. Well, I wish it was yesterday, but look, we need some rain, I guess, too. So you take what you get and enjoy it the whole way along the way.
Well, I didn't play golf yesterday, so it was okay. But, there you go. Hey, I read a disturbing story over the weekend. Former Secretary of State John Kerry is under some fire over a report claiming that he has been engaged in shadow diplomacy, quote unquote, with officials from Iran and Europe as part of a final attempt to save the seemingly doomed 2015 Iran nuclear deal. The president, of course, has until, I guess, Saturday to approve that or not. This is a violation, although it's never been used at anybody, of what they call the Logan Act, which prohibits private citizens from negotiating on behalf of the U.S. government without authorization. Apparently, he's making calls to people like Macron and the German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier. Does this trouble you at all?
Yeah, it does trouble me, and I don't like when either side does it. We have elections for a reason, and you might obviously be invested in the policy that you helped to craft and implement, and I get that, but that doesn't mean you have the right to go out and act like you're your own government. That's why we have elections in this country, and that's why things move back and forth. And it was meant to reflect the will of the people at that time, and things change over time as well. And so I know it's coming to light now, but it's been done in the past. I mean, Senator Kennedy did it when Reagan was elected, and that's the most recent time in my memory, although I suspect it's probably happened before that. There's a lot of passion involved in these things, and I think that people find it difficult to let go once they have they put what they believe to be the best policy in action. They don't want to see that upended, but it's important that we maintain our fidelity to the oaths that we take, regardless. And some people have a difficulty with that.
Yeah, nobody should be. You had your shot. Okay, you did your stuff. Now it's a matter of another president's in there, and whether you like it or not, he has his way he wants to do things. I understand that the biggest problem that the president has with this new deal has to do with the Iran deal, rather. Has to do with some missiles that are not covered in that, ballistic missiles that aren't covered in the deal. Is that correct?
I think that's one of the major issues. And, of course, they used to be covered, but under the provisions of the Iran nuclear deal, which at the time we were told would have nothing bearing on the other provisions of sanctioning Iran for their activities, including ballistic missile capability and testing. That stuff was eviscerated in the Iran nuclear deal and included in it. And of course, Gary, we're still finding out what some of the side deals were. And if I can take you back to that time, there were side deals that we knew occurred, but we weren't privy to and weren't allowed to be privy to. And still at this day, we're not sure what those were and what they are. We're still finding out. And so, with all due respect to Mr. Kerry or anybody else, especially when the American people's representative don't know the scope of the deal, and therefore the American people don't know the full scope of the deal, it is rife, I think, for criticism and second guessing. And on this occasion, and in this instance, there's absolutely no reason to have a ballistic missile unless you're interested in delivering something with that ballistic missile. And I don't mean to be coy here, but you don't deliver leaflets and groceries with a ballistic missile. There's only one reason to send something out of the atmosphere, to have it re-enter the atmosphere somewhere else on the Earth, and that is to deliver a nuclear payload. So there's no reason that Iran should have that if they're interested in a peaceful nuclear program, which is why so many of us, myself included, were just screaming from the top of the mountains when this was all occurring. This is going the wrong way. This is a bad deal for America.
What are the main agenda items that are on the list for you this week as you head back to Congress? What are the big things that you're going to be dealing with?
Well, I think we're going to be dealing with, unfortunately, whether you like it or not, the situation with Rod Rosenstein and his refusal to give the Congress the information that it has into the dealings with the investigation of the current administration, potentially the president, all of that stuff. We would like to get to, I think we're going to be discussing the Farm Bill and some important policy on education, but the the background, and the background is going to be all of that stuff because, you can't have Mr. Rosenstein out there saying that the Congress is extorting the Department of Justice. The Department of Justice was created by the Congress, and the Congress pays for the Department of Justice. The Department of Justice is not a branch of government on its own. It is not a fourth branch of government. It's not a co-equal branch. The only way Congress can do the oversight of the executive branch is to have the information. And Mr. Rosenstein, while he's the steward of that information, he is not above the law, and it's not his personal information. It is the information of the citizens of the United States of America. And when they demand to see it through their representatives, he is compelled to give it. And I would just say this, too. We shouldn't have to subpoena the Department of Justice for this information. We should have to ask for it, and we can ask for it professionally and officially. But once we ask, we should get it so we can do our proper oversight. The fact that we have to subpoena it and then he says that he's not going to give it to us, and that he's going to, and that we're extorting him for it. To me, in my mind, he's the one that is extorting the American people. If there are national security implications, I got it. There are people in the Congress that have the same security clearance as Mr. Rosenstein, and they can view that stuff and make sure that everything's proper there. But if you think that just because it's the Department of Justice that no one in there has ever broken the law, unfortunately, the record is replete with people that have.
Congressman Scott Perry from the 4th Congressional with us here this morning. I was just looking back at what the talking heads had to say yesterday, and I'm always juxtaposed, I guess, the sublime and the ridiculous, Scott. But Mike McFaul on Meet the Press yesterday defended Kerry violating the Logan Act to save the Iran deal by saying this, quote, "This is sad to me. We don't all pledge allegiance to the president. We are a free society," unquote. I thought we did. I thought we'd pledged allegiance to our country and who's elected at that time. I mean, this idea that because it's Trump, you can do anything you want to now, really doesn't sit well with a lot of us.
Right. Well, you do pledge allegiance to our flag, and of course, it's the symbol of our nation. But more importantly, Gary, we each raise our right hand, if you can picture that, and take an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution. And the Constitution, of course, embodies all the laws of this country. And the only difference between the lawfulness that we have and abject tyranny, where individuals decide what's right for us and countervail the will of the people, is the willingness and the integrity of good people to abide by the law. And I understand that Mr. Kerry and a lot of people might really disdain this president and might disagree with him vehemently, but I just need to remind everybody there was a lot of people that disdained the previous president and the things that he was interested in doing, but we argued on policy and we leveled our disagreements publicly, but respectfully. And we, when we lost the battle, so to speak, the political battle, we moved on. We didn't try and subvert the government of our country. And that's literally what this is. And I think we have to start really taking this stuff seriously about the people that take the oath and their willingness to not only just take the oath to be in a position of authority over the rest of us, but to abide by that oath. And if they're not willing to do that, if that's something that is gone by the wayside, that is seen as outdated, as I think, unfortunately, our Constitution is by some people, it's seen as outdated. If that's where we are, we really better take stock of who we are as a nation, because those things are the provisions of nations that don't last, because the people don't. It's not the people's government. It's the government
right.
Then runs the people, and that's not what America was set up to do.
Not a respect for the rules that we kind of had together in this compact that we had to create the country. I want to talk to you a little bit about immigration and North Korea, two big items
Sure.
that I know are on the table this week as well. Let's take immigration first.
Yeah, we're trying to move some bill in the House. I prefer, even though I think it has some problems, what's called the Goodlatte bill. Representative Goodlatte, the chairman of Judiciary, him and Representative Chairman McCall, Homeland Security, put a bill together, and we want to weigh in on this. We would like to find a solution to the deferred action for childhood arrivals, but at the same time, deal with border security. Which, if you looked at these individuals that came up through Mexico from El Salvador and points south of Mexico to our border, and many have made it across currently under what are called the the parole provisions, you can just see that we still have significant problems there. We need to secure our border. We want immigrants to come, but we want them to come lawfully. We need to know who's coming into our communities from a lawful standpoint, from a health standpoint. We need to know who those people are, what their intentions are. So we have to get to that. The Senate has seen unable to do it, but the House, I think, that needs to weigh in here, and we need to get to a bill that we can support and pass. So we definitely have that on the table. Of course, we're all watching North Korea. Changes that 60 years of the same policy has gotten us essentially nowhere or behind where we want to be, whether you like the president, whether you like his rhetoric, et cetera. Seems like things are moving in the right direction, and if we can continue that, it'll just be great for the whole world, not just the United States, but the whole world, to not have that specter of violence and danger to deal with every single day we wake up.
I know one of the things that President Trump has said is that his tough policy is the reason they're coming to the table. I saw the North Koreans reacting over the weekend saying that wasn't necessarily so. I guess, they got to save face too.
Sure.
Do we need to be a little bit more humble in terms of, announcing why they may have gotten to the table? Do we need to do that instead of just, running out there and saying, I was tough and that's why they're there? Whatever the reason is they're there, and we have to see if that's for real or not, right?
Well, if the president, I agree with you, Gary, that we are happy that they're there, and it is a good thing that they're there. But let's remember how they got there. And I think just like a race car driver, you don't take your foot off the gas pedal as the finish line is approaching. If the president truly believes that is the circumstance and he feels like he needs to do that, the difference between negotiating in private, where only the individuals involved in the negotiation know what's going on or what brought them to the table, and public diplomacy is it's public. And so we all get to hear these things, and I think it makes it much more difficult. And so the president, he obviously doesn't want to jeopardize anything by having the North Koreans look like they're losing face. But I think at the same time, he must feel like this is how he got to the position he is in and we are in. And he wants to maintain his strength in that position. And if that's what he feels like he has to do to keep them moving in the right direction, then that's what he has to do. Of course, they have the opportunity to weigh in and say,
right,
no, that has nothing to do with it. But again, we've tried the old way for 60 years now. And, it took this president a little better than a year to get to the point where we are now.
Thank you so much, Congressman, for taking the time this morning. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Gary.
Keeping you in the know. WSBA's Morning News with Gary Sutton. Weekdays 6 to 9 on News Talk 93.9 and 910 WSBA.